Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? My name is Tony Zano, and this is episode 285 of the world famous, the University of Love. Ladies and gentlemen, the best podcast in 1, 2, 3 galaxies. But you and I, folks, we just call it Online Marketing Moves, and we are coming to you live today. Today is Thursday, May the 20th, 2021, at the time of this recording. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you today? Now, today we are going to talk about something that's important. We are going to talk about intensity. How's your intensity level? Where's your intensity level at when it comes to your business, when it comes to this whole online marketing space, Now, intensity is something that, think about your favorite, your favorite football team, your favorite, you know, hockey team, your favorite. You get intense, you get passion, you get all this kind of stuff. But intensity, when it comes to you, when it comes to creating content, you want to have some intensity. And the reason why you want to have that is because people can see, even you listen to people's voices, you see people's movements, inflections, intensity is something that is there, and the more, and I'm not saying you have to be, steroid driven intensity, but you can have quiet intensity. You can have, it's just like whenever I'm about to do a podcast, for an example, you know, I get I get excited, Of course, I have the passion, and then the intensity, the intensity is also there. And I'm like, because you know, I say, and when I say this is the best podcast in 1, 2, 3 galaxies, I mean what I say, And so we come out, and I do the intensity level is raised because I definitely know this is the best podcast in the world, and we're gonna make this the best podcast in the world. It's just the rest of the world has to catch up. So the intensity is there, and the reason why I bring up intensity is because I watched a few of my favorite clips yesterday. One of my favorite clips is the scene in Top Gun. If you ever seen Top Gun, then if you haven't, check it out. But it's the scene where they are examining Maverick's flying ability in the class, and his, the girl that he wants to date is examining it, and she's like, what was you thinking, and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't like the way she talked and all this kind of stuff. And so he drove off in his motorcycle. She drove off real fast in his car, and there's an intensity because both of them have strong feelings for each other. And so, he was yelling at her, she was yelling at him. It's a very intense scene, and sometimes intensity is something that you need, because the one thing about this, you don't want to, if somebody was not into, if somebody was not, you can tell when people are not into certain things. Like, if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis and you said, man, this guy, he don't give a damn if we listen or not, and there's nothing there, there's no passion, there's no intensity, you know what I mean? Like, you would turn it off. And and I'll give you another example. I watched that scene with Tom Cruise and, Kelly McGillis, and there's very intense. And then another intense thing that I watched yesterday was a couple of wrestling clips, and the one of the more common things that the top wrestlers have in common is there is an intensity. Their wrestling might be, the ending is determined, is predetermined. Okay, the ending is predetermined, but everything else is sort of up in the air, And when I used to watch it in the 80s and 90s, and even a little bit in the early 2000s, the top people always had intensity. They always looked like, I'm about to kick so and so's, backside, and you just felt it, and even though, like, hey, this might be predetermined, but these guys are very real. This is a very intense guy. Like I watched Stone Cold Steve Austin, the way he walked down to the ring. You saw the intensity. You saw the look in his eyes. You felt it. You felt the connection, and that is why people connected with him. And that is why he made a lot of money from his being Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because you felt that. You felt the intensity. And another person that I watched yesterday, I watched a 6-minute clip of him talking, and he just started talking, and then you felt the more he talked, the more he worked himself up, and you just felt the intensity. You felt that energy, and that was Ric Flair. And he was talking, and next thing you know, he was sweating, and I'm like, man, this is very intense, and you just can feel that in people, and you want to have this kind of intensity. You want to have this kind of feeling when it comes to your business, because I was thinking last night, and I was like, you know, I gotta crank it up, and I'm just sitting out there, and before I started watching these episodes, I'm sitting here, because I was waiting around. I had to wait around on, you know, had to wait around on a trailer, some information about a trailer, and so I'm sitting out there, and I'm talking to myself, and I'm thinking, you know what, I gotta crank this up. I gotta crank this out because I know I beat this horse, but it is what it is. But I'm like, full time. Like that's my goal, and I'm like, I have the passion, I have all that jazz, the intensity. I'm saying I'm revving it up, and I started thinking about the podcast, and I'm like, I have been a little more, we now that we have our footing, you know what I mean? At first you're kind of wobbling around, you kind of, you really don't know what to do. Sometimes you try to figure out what to say. Then after a while, once you get your footing, and you like I told you, you don't have to. If you start off with something, you don't have to be in love with it. But once you get going, and once you say, "Oh, you know what? I'm starting to fall in love," like I always wanted to do a podcast. I always thought about the radio, but that's neither here nor there. But then when I started doing it. I'm like, hey, we're not doing any marketing. We're not doing any promotions. We're not doing any of that. But we are starting to gain a following. You know what I mean? And so that's the passion. And then now I'm more and more. I can feel myself when I'm talking. I can feel myself getting worked up, and I feel the intensity, in my body. And I'm like, all right, this is, I feel it, and it's something, and hopefully you could feel it in the words, in the microphone, and when you're listening, I hope you can feel the passion, you feel the intensity, because of course, if you didn't, you wouldn't be listening. But you you want to, because it's if you're indifferent, like if you're indifferent about trying to make money, then you're not gonna make any money. You know what I mean? Like you have to have, of course, everybody tells you, you got to have a reason, that's great and everything, you got your reason, but then you have to get fired up, you have to have some passion, you need some intensity, you need to, let me go out here and get it, you know what I mean? Because it's not going to be easy. Of course, we all know that it's not going to be easy, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more, the intensity will go up, and the more you do something and the better you get at it, and the more, I mean, let's be honest with each other. You start doing this whole internet marketing thing, and you start generating some money. You're like, all right, now you want some more money. So you're going to work harder, and you're going to work harder, and you're going to build this. You're going to build this fire. You're going to build this intensity. You're going to build this passion, around this whole thing, and you're going to want it more and more. And that's just how it goes. And so I watched I watched Stone Cold. I watched Ric Flair. I watched I watched Top Gun. I watched the Top Gun scene. I watched I watched Denzel Washington in Training Day. Now the character he played was an evil person, but the acting, and I was like, Denzel was very, like, in the last scene when he was doing a whole speech about King Kong, and he's acting, but you could see how into it he was. You can see how, intent, and that was an intense moment, and he's out there screaming and yelling, and it's just like, man, that is, it's crazy to see. But you see somebody in their craft, and all people, all of us in the world, we have some form of intensity. You know what I mean? It's sort of like when you meet somebody, you meet a person, you go on a date, and there's intense feelings, maybe they're physical, maybe they're emotional, whatever, but you have it's intensity between the two of you, and then you go on a date or you go on a few dates, and then finally the intensity is just there, and you feel it, and you're like, you know what, let's go to bed. You know what I mean? And even there, not to I'm not going to get into your bedroom life, but if you really want somebody, if you want repeat business, man, one man, it doesn't matter. You have to, you know the person will feel the intensity coming off you. You know what I mean? Like, they will feel the passion, they will feel the intensity that you have for them. And if you're indifferent, you're like, yeah, I take it, whatever. Then it's not gonna work. The chemistry is not gonna be there. You know what I mean? So intensity is everywhere. You just have to, it will come out of you. You just have to feel it and go with it. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing. It's not nothing wrong with. I mean, you see people all the time. You see your like if you. I remember one. I'll give you an example of an intense moment I had in my life. I remember it was 2003. I don't know if you're familiar with baseball, but the Chicago Cubs, up until then, they haven't won. And my dad, he had me being a big Chicago Cubs fan all my childhood, all my life. So 2003, the Cubs are on the verge of going to the World Series. They're up 3-1, and I remember watching. I remember watching. We watched Game 5. Okay, me and my dad, and they lost. And so we was like, all right, that's cool. They lost. We're gonna come back. Game 6. Game 6 is like one of the most, like, I've never screamed at it. I probably haven't screamed at a TV since then, but I've never been so, you know, wound tight. I was very intense. I was very me and my dad. I remember we was watching and we was yelling and we was screaming and we was just like, because if you wanted something so long, and even though you're not playing, and I know people like, well, people, you don't play, why? But when you have something that you love, when you want to see the end result, you want to see the result that you want to see, and it was very intense in our house. And me and him, we was just like, what the is going on right now? And then, it was like in the 8th inning, and then they had the incident with a guy, he caught the ball, but it wasn't his fault, but the Cubs just broke down and they blew it. And I remember my dad, he was pissed and I was pissed. And I just, it was like, at that moment, I was so annoyed. We were so, like, it was just, it was like a volcano. My head would, if I was a volcano, my head would explode. I would have exploded at that moment. It was just intense. It was just an intense game, and it was intense, and I was just so annoyed and so upset, and I was very pissed off. And I'm like, how could they lose this effing game? And I mean, and the intensity level, I'm not gonna lie, all of that was drained out of me, because Game 7, I was like, I don't care, man, they're gonna lose anyway. And I just had the feeling, because you up 3-1, and you blow an important game like Game 6. It's kind of hard to get fired back up for Game 7. As I'm not. Listen, I'm not a professional athlete by any means, but I've played enough. I've played enough sports. I've played for no money and have been intense in the game and elbowed the hell out of somebody, and they've elbowed the hell out of me to win. So I can only imagine at that level. You're a professional, the intensity level. So you know, people talk about passion, but you want to bring the intensity as well. You know what I mean? And people can feel that. That's a reason why people liked watching Tiger Woods play. Like, I know a lot of people, they didn't like the fist pumping and all that, but the guy was intense. Like, the guy wanted to win. Like, you could see that. And when you see something in somebody like that, and then you're like, man, they want it bad, and you want to root for them. You know what I mean? Like, you see the intensity. Like, it's like Kobe Bryant. Like, this guy, he wanted to win bad. Good, bad, and indifferent. Maybe they're obsessed, but sometimes we all get obsessed with certain things. You know what I mean? We all have an intensity level about things that we want. And your content, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be like, but people can feel it. That sometimes you have a quiet intensity. You can just, you're like, I want this. I want this. What can I do? I need to do more. Like now, the more we get into this, the more we create this content, the more we do this podcast. Me myself, I'm like, you know what? The intensity is there. Now, and then with my wife telling me, that we're gonna have a daughter, I'm like, all right, crank this up because I want to be there with my child on a regular basis. I want to work from home, and I can only create I can create my own work from home company, work from home career. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's gonna do that for me. So, it's an intensity, it's a passion, it's all of it put into a bucket. You know what I mean? And here we are, and we are, and it's coming together, and that's what I want from you. Everybody talks to you about passion, but it's like, yeah, that's great and everything, but get intense, like get some intensity, get some momentum going, and fire yourself up, and you will see more and more results. You will see better results, and people can feel that, people can see that, it comes across. You know what I mean? And because one thing that you don't want as a because when you create content, and this goes for all of us. When you create content, you are looking for people to follow you. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, hey, I'm a beacon of light. Hey, look at me, look what I'm doing, follow me. Let me help you. Let me show you the way. Let me guide you to something. I'm not, this not a cult kind of thing, but you want people to follow you. You're like, hey, I believe I have content that can help you out. I believe I have content that can lead you to where you want to go. And that's for all of us. And nobody's gonna follow you if you're indifferent. If they don't feel the passion, they don't feel the intensity. You know what I mean? So make sure, and it's not, and you can't buy it. You can't buy intensity. You can't fake it. It will be there, and you will feel it, and you will start to realize, like, hey, okay, I'm into this, and what can I do? And you will start to get, you know for me, when I get intense about things, I start to get a slight, obsessed about them. I'm like, not in a bad way, you know but in a good way. And you're like, all right, what can I do to get this better? What can I do to make this thing work? What can I do to make sure that people know that, blah 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 blah. So remember that. And when you watch the TV, sometimes you can just see it. Like if you're watching sports, you can feel, if you're watching your favorite team. See if you feel the intensity about when you're watching. Because you want them to make every shot. You want them to win the game. You know what I mean? And you just sort of feel it. And sometimes that happens when you're watching, fights. You sort of, you're not in the fight. Don't get me wrong, but you're just like, this is tense. You feel the intensity. It's sort of like, I remember another example when me and my wife we went and watched the first Avengers, the end game, the part one. We watched the Avengers Endgame part one, and I remember I was sitting in there and I told her, I said, I'm feeling real intense right now. I don't know why. What? And she was like, I know, I feel it too. She's like, I'm intense because I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, she's like, this is crazy. This is a movie. And I'm like, yeah, and we were very into it because Thanos was just thumping them around, and it was, kind of wild to see, And you wanted, and I'm like, come on, man, let's go, come on, come on, Avengers or whatever, And it's just a movie and all that, but at the same time, it was a great movie, and it's very intense because you're in the theater and you want the Avengers to win, but they didn't, and you're like, well, damn, And you like, what happened? And I remember we just got up and I was like, man, what's gonna happen? You know what I mean? And we couldn't wait for the next movie to come out. And so, it's just, when it's there, it's there. You know what I mean? So figure out what gets you going. Figure out what, and trust me, it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be anything. You feel it in your bones. Like the intensity is there. It's intensity is in all of us. Like I said, from watching a movie to, you know, being attracted to somebody that you really like, and then all of a sudden you and this person or about to go to bed with each other. There's intensity, and you feel it. You feel you know, you feel the vibes, you feel the intensity. It is there, you know what I mean? And so keep that in mind when you are doing this whole online stuff. Whatever you want to do, you will get intense about it. You will feel the intensity, and make sure that you don't be ashamed. Put it into your work. You know what I mean? Like, I wish sometimes you could see my hand movements at certain at certain points, because when I start talking sometimes and I'm really into it, my hands start moving at 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm just like, this, that, and the other, and I'm like, But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, go out there, go to the store, buy some intensity. No, I'm just kidding. Now you will feel it. You will know it's there, and have a little bit in everything you do, and trust me, the results will be there. Everybody talks about passion, and that's great and everything, but you want be intense. Intensity, passion, effort, consistency, all of it. Put it all in your bucket. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the podcast today. We will be back tomorrow with the all new episode of Online Marketing Moves. But until then, I am Tony Rizzano. Thank you for listening. And as always, everybody, well, first off, if you haven't already, tell a friend to tell a friend about the best podcast in 3 galaxies. But ladies and gentlemen, that's it. And as always, everybody, peace.